Thank you, Kate, and good day to everybody. I'm delighted that you could join us today, and looking forward to sharing some of the trends that we're seeing through IACC's Meeting Room of the Future report. It's great to see so many familiar properties from across Europe and the US, and of course, for a number of you, I know will be also welcoming you or your colleagues to next week's IACC Connect event. And I've put on the bottom of today's slides the hashtag for next week. So if you would like to, if you can't join us in Philadelphia and would like to follow what's going on and what we've got planned for our group, then please do follow us on Twitter on IACC Connect 18. But as Kate said, we have 45 minutes to run through the key research. So it's going to be a fast and furious session. Throughout the session, please do ask your questions from within the chat box, and Kate will keep a beady eye on that, and I'm sure we'll find a gap to interrupt me so that we can address any questions you've got. Otherwise, we will pick up some of those questions at the end. So without any further ado, I just wanted to share with you all a phrase that came about to me, completely unrelated to the meetings industry, but it made me stop, made me think, and I think it's really relevant to the fact that you know, that trends in the meeting spaces and the role that meeting venues provides and offers is really critical. And that is, innovation relies on managed serendipity. It's the ability to leverage the productive collision of people and the ideas that of course come out through their meetings, but also using the right tools, whether that's technology or something else, but critically the right places. So when we look at you know, meeting spaces, the meeting environments, the different experiences we put together, you know, if all of that is not right, then it doesn't matter how clever the people are or how many ideas they've got inside them. If we don't bring it all together, then our customers don't have a great meeting, don't come up with great innovations and ideas to succeed in their business. So I just wanted to share that one with you and hopefully give a little bit of context as to why we think understanding the trends in the meetings industry is so critical to the role they play in terms of the facilities and the venues that we provide. So in the next 45 minutes, I'll give you a real sort of small background on myself and IACC. I know a number of you are IACC properties, that you know the brand, you know, incredibly well, but there's also some that are joining us today that I know do not know IACC. So we will give you a little bit of context in relation to the research. I'll give you a little bit of an overview of the background of the research. Then we'll go and start to look at some of the key findings as well. You know, we'll look at trends in everything from food, beverage, technology, the physical meeting spaces, of course, and you know, audio visual side of things. So we'll really be going sort of full stretch to look at all of the elements in terms of you know, what has been affecting our industry and what we might want to expect and see more of in the future. So a little bit of background as to me, the person you're giving your time to for the next hour or so. I'm Mark Cooper. I hopefully have met a number of you at different IACC events, regional events, national events, etc. I've been with IACC for 5 years, but actually part of the hospitality industry and the meetings industry for far longer than that. This was a picture of my grandparents' village pub in England. That's where I first got a taste of hospitality, and where I guess I got bitten by the bug that made sure that I was part of the, you know, part of this industry from there on in. And I've been fortunate enough to work with organizations like Warwick Conferences. I see we've got our team from Warwick Conferences in the UK here today. De Vere Hotels, now Principal Hotels. In the US, Dolce Hotels and Resorts. And as well as being on the conference center and conference venue side, I've also been able to be a part of the meeting planner side as well of the fence, which has been Conference Direct and Sundial Options and Solutions, working with a number of clients, including those like Pearson Education, Reed Elsevier, Coca-Cola Enterprises, on helping them book meetings throughout the world, and hopefully that gave me, you know, a little bit of a balance between venue operation and also meeting planning. And I'll try and share some of those thoughts with you today as it relates to trends and why they might be manifesting themselves. So a few fast facts, if you weren't aware, as an association, we've been around a long time. 1981, we're just celebrating our 35th year for IACC being in existence. And we have just over 300 venues throughout the world, in 25 countries, so throughout Australia, Asia, Europe, North America, including Canada, and more recently we've added Mongolia as well, Malaysia, which we're really thrilled about, and we continue to grow our presence. And that's relevant in regards to the research that we are going to share today. We have a 1% share, market share. Our goal is to represent the top 1% of meeting venues globally, and that's you. If you're an IACC certified property, that's absolutely, you're part of that 1% share, and we want to shout from the rooftops, you know, just how great our meeting venues are. If you're joining us today from a different organization or a venue that isn't part of IACC, well, maybe there's an opportunity for you to take a look at the quality standards and see if, you know, you may well be a part of, or can be a part of that community. And then last but not least, you know, one of the things I always like to share, particularly with our meeting planner community, is what makes IACC still unique today, as it was back in 1981, is the only way you can be one of those 300 venues in 25 countries is if you meet a really strict, a really high quality, or high set of standards in relation to quality standards. So that's everything across, you know, ambience, technology, food and beverage offer. It's, you know, there's I think 57 different quality standards that you have to meet or exceed to be part of IACC. So that's enough about IACC and the association. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a flavor, as I say, for those who are not familiar with the organization. A typical hotel or venue that isn't IACC certified, you know, everything in terms of their experience is centered around the guest rooms, room revenue, RevPAR, the leadership, the venue, the investment in those areas. And what makes the IACC certified venues, which have been an integral part of looking into the research and trends here, what makes them absolutely unique is everything centers around meetings, and the rest of it, you know, although it's high quality, is secondary to that investment. And that's what really makes the experience very different when you come into one of the IACC certified properties, as I say, opposed to a venue where, you know, they have their focus, they have their attention based on something different. Now, this is something that we can't do on an interactive basis, but if you're using your chat box and you're there and you're fast on your fingers, maybe, you know, I'd like to ask a question. What do you think this picture represents, or what is it? If you have an idea, you know, pop your answer in the text box. Kate and I will keep one eye on it as well, and I'm sure we can work out a prize for somebody who manages to work out what this represents. I'm going to give you all a clue, which should make it a little bit easier. So this is a picture of something that is the most popular something. Yes, we know we're in a forest. Yes, we know there's a bed there. But what could this be the most popular? Kate, have we got anything else? Anyone who's been able to enter into the chat box? Any guesses at this stage?
No, everyone's very shy at the moment, Mark. Nothing at the moment.
Everyone's really shy. Okay, well, that's not a problem. But let me help you out a little bit.
We are Emma and Gail from Warwick, Mark. Sorry to interrupt. Emma and Gail have said a sleeping experience.
Well, it absolutely is. You're quite right, Emma and Gail. Thanks for giving the Q&A a go there. It's actually the most popular Airbnb venue worldwide in 2017, which is quite incredible. Actually, for anyone who wants to know where it is, this incredible property is based in California, in the US. Why am I showing you this? Well, the reason I'm showing you this and sharing this with you is, you know, I passionately believe that the environment that we're in at the moment, you know, when we look at the experiences we crave as individuals for our weekend away with friends and family, for our next restaurant experience, it's all about, providing an experience that's absolutely unique, something that's going to create a memory, right? Not necessarily led as the way it used to be in years gone by brands, hotel brands, etc. And this is no different when we think about the experience that a conference delegate wants. They want a memory, they want something that's unique, and it's our responsibility when we let the environment that we provide to provide something that is akin to this. And this is absolutely, one of the things that's driving the appetite for meeting planners and organizations to create something unique and special, and as I say, memorable. So let's start and jump into some of the trends now, really without any further delay. We surveyed 250 meeting respondents from 5 continents around the world. It was important that we got a really good representation. And these were meeting planners. So we really went out there and made sure that we're working with meeting planners, and specifically those meeting planners that book the smaller meetings. Now, they may book larger meetings in the thousands, but as we know for IACC, what's really important is these are meeting planners that are booking training courses, smaller meetings, smaller conferences, generally under 200 people, because that's the area that's really, that we're passionate about getting a good understanding for. We looked at some of the key geographical and generational divides. So we asked that question, was there a difference between the expectation of meeting planners and the trends that we're seeing in Europe or Finland or, the UK as opposed to in Chicago or in Japan? And equally, we wanted to understand is, from a meeting planner's perspective, are some of these changes and trends being influenced by the incoming generations and the outgoing generations in terms of meeting planners? Can actually give you a little bit of feedback now to say that in the rest of the presentation, we won't be sharing with you geographical and generational differences. And the reason for that is purely that we didn't see enough differences between these groups in terms of their behaviors, what they wanted, what frustrated them. There was absolute alignment and unity in regards to what we want. So, if you're a meeting planner, one of the pieces of advice I would give to you, and we do often when we meet with and educate our meeting planners around the world, is be brave. Don't be held back from taking risks in terms of the venue or the activity, the team building, or the experience, of food and beverage experience you're going to be creating, because actually meeting delegates want the same thing. They crave for the same sort of experiences, and there isn't that big divide that maybe some feel that there is. One of the areas this year which was new, now this research is 3 years in the making, was we asked if venue marketing practices were aligned with buyer priorities. And what I mean by that is, if we put something or believe something is a high priority in relation to the venues and we give it brochure space, is that the same level of priority that a meeting planner considers, that a buyer considers when they're evaluating you? And I will be highlighting some differences in relation that we found in relation to importance given by venues versus importance given by meeting planners. And hopefully I can just share with you some tips, and you can go away and take a look at that and see, if you're giving enough credence to something within your marketing. And for those of you on the call today that are working with a myriad of different providers, we did again look at meeting planners across a wide spectrum: corporate, association, government meeting planners, commercial meeting planners as well, to make sure we got a good representation from all those buyer groups. Everything was changing, technology was changing, the venue facilities were changing, what we were expecting in terms of furnishings, and the way meeting formats were changing so fast. We felt that somebody really needed to try and get a grasp of what's changing, why it's changing, and try to predict what the changes will be in 2 to 3 years time. And being 35 years old as an association, we've got a great audience out there and some very strong connections, whether it be IACC members, which we know are the most entrepreneurial venue operators out there with some incredible unique facilities, some real early adopters in terms of change. Meeting planners, through our work with organizations and our strategic partnership with MPI as an example, we had a great opportunity to be able to work with meeting planner groups. Industry experts, people like Corbin Ball, who we see there, who's the IT guru and has been for many years. We've got a great collection of people who are experts in specific fields who would be willing to help us with the research. And then last but not least, our suppliers, those that again are innovating in the space, people like PSAV. For those of you familiar with PSAV, they're one of the the top largest audio visual and technology providers in our space, certainly in the US, growing in Europe and in other parts of the world as well. You may ask as well why Microsoft, are on there. Well, interestingly, Microsoft wanted to be a part of this research, not because it's a big brand, and has a big presence in our meeting spaces and conference rooms at the moment, but purely for the reason that they want to be providers. They want to be significant providers in that space. And through a technology that they've been working on, and they have now introduced as well, called Surface Hub, where they're bringing interactive elements together like Skype, like document sharing onto large screens in meeting room spaces. Their reason for being a part of our research was to contribute what they had already found out themselves, but also help to gain an understanding from IACC. So we had a great group of people, like I say, from all those 4 areas that were willing to stand up, be a part of Meeting Room of the Future. And as I say, we're into our 3rd year now, and we will have our next research will actually come out in late May this year as well. So do watch out for that. So now let's get into some of the key findings, some of the key things that we found when we digested the latest research. One of them is, the educational objectives are critical. Obviously, the content in a meeting and a conference is absolutely critical, but the personalized experience gains traction, and it is gaining more and more traction. Now, from that, what I mean is the experience of each and every one individual. And if I just share with you now one thought, the moment that we bring 100 people, 50 people, it doesn't matter how many it is, but the moment we bring a group of people together, if we provide just one solution for them, whether it's one style of seating, one style of food and beverage, we're not personalizing the experience for them. We're providing one thing, and that will satisfy some of our group, but you're never going to satisfy all. And we'll look at some of the examples of personalization, that go way beyond maybe what you think in terms of the areas of where we can influence. But everybody is seeking a personalized experience, and meeting planners are telling us it's becoming more and more important. Now, our younger generations are becoming a larger part of the delegate pool, and they are absolutely influencing. The one thing we don't have to do with our incoming generations is teach them to become good at using, for instance, the technologies that are being introduced that are really helping in meetings. They get that. The instructions are easy, the adoption is a lot higher, and it's making our job better and easier to be able to integrate. And certainly when it comes to things like conference apps, audience participation, etc., the providers are becoming a lot more mature now in their solutions, and they're easier to use, less cumbersome. Now, this is a big number. 80% of meeting planners reported that their role involves more of what we're calling this experience creation. Last year was 75%. It was still a big number. We didn't anticipate that this would actually get bigger, but it is 80%. It's something that really has gained a lot of traction. Meeting planners are giving more time to planning, for these memories, for this personalization, and if you're not providing something that stands out and makes you unique from your competitors in terms of the meeting offer, then you're really missing a key opportunity for meeting planners. And just understanding how critical it is in their minds, how to relate to that on site inspections, is a perfect way for you to show your alignment. And when we talk about certainly about all of the elements that create a meetings experience. Just consider, I'm not going to go into the details of neuroscience, you'll be pleased to know, this afternoon, but some of the comments here that I'll share are key. Neuroscientists, cognitive psychologists, they all tell us that the participants' senses are stimulated, and as we stimulate those, the more memorable the meetings experience is going to be for them. The more parts of their brain are activated. They help them absorb and retain information more effectively, and it absolutely creates more engagement at the event. I was delivering this same research just 3 weeks ago in Tokyo in a brand new conference facility, and they were changing the LED lighting according to actually what they were trying to recreate in that venue. So they had red when they wanted people to be warm and more participative. They also had blue, moving to blue, where it actually heightened people's senses. So but it goes way beyond what we see. It's what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we taste and touch. And none of us will be alien to the fact that we can hit all of those senses when we look at the food and beverage element that we provide. It's a great way for us to be able to do that. Meeting planners now, we're starting to hear meeting planners looking at creating what we call a sensory exposure audit. They take a look at their meeting, and we're doing it for IACC meetings, and saying what senses are we touching, and at what points throughout the event. Because we want to make sure that it's alive right the way through, and not just one sort of sensory experience. So something that I think we'll find more, or we'll see more science behind this as well in the future. This is one of my favorites. This year, again, for the first time, we asked this one question: can brands alone give confidence and reassurance that the meeting product and service will be of high standard? What does that mean? When we look at the fact that 62% of conference organizers are using large hotel chains, that's a pretty significant number. So we asked and we dug deeper, and we said, well, okay, do you align, a significant meeting hotel brand with quality of technology, quality of furniture, good night's sleep, food and beverage? They said yes to all of that, which is not surprising. Otherwise, that would be a much lower percentage, right? But interestingly, the one and only area where they didn't connect big hotel brands with the question we asked them was around creativity. Now, let's just think about what we've been talking about for the last 10 minutes. We've got to create more, or rather, we've got to host more creative meetings. We've got to be more innovative, create more memories, etc. Well, two things here. If you're part of a large hotel chain, you've maybe got to work a little bit harder to book the trend because of this perception for meeting planners. If you're part of an independent or small group of venues, here's a great opportunity, because you can absolutely give influence to and weight to the fact that you're highly creative through some of these solutions that maybe meeting planners aren't experiencing in larger brands. We're not quite sure, and we dug a little bit deeper in terms of the research. We're not quite sure why this disconnect is happening. Is it a problem? Is it because larger hotel brands are maybe seen as a safety blanket, a safer option? We're not sure, but it's something that we'd like to gain a deeper understanding on. Now, when we looked at technology, for example, 20% of the respondents reported that they expect increased pressure to stay ahead of the curve. And the reason that this is in red is because we didn't take that as a positive. Actually, what we're finding is there's so much pressure to integrate technology into meetings, and there's so many of them, whether it's live streaming, whether it's Twitter wars, audience participation, conference apps, slide sharing. I could go on and on and on. There's so many and so many ways that they're being introduced. Meeting planners are just starting to feel a little bit out of control and a little bit of pressure to introduce them, and they're slightly nervous, and maybe some of them are not making a difference. So just something that meeting planners are aware of, and you know, something that I think is really valuable for meeting venue operators to think of as well. Now, 28% of meeting planners have indicated an increased emphasis on ROI. And for those of you who've been in the industry like me for a while, you'll remember ROI was a big thing, you know, 5 years ago or more, and it kind of went away. You know, we haven't seen so much about ROI, but it's starting to come back. Now, we haven't got anything any deeper to share with you, but something to look out for. You know, return on investment is something that is, is becoming more of an important reflection point for meeting planners. So if we can help measure how delegates are feeling, you know, and help with feedback, sharing feedback, for instance, from the group with meeting planners to help them demonstrate ROI, maybe, just maybe that's an opportunity. And we're going to jump into food and beverage in a lot more detail, but just think of this one percentage. 79% of planners say that nutritional info should be displayed on food stations. And I don't just mean, you know, dinner on the menu, being able to provide that. Think about it at breakfast, think about it at lunch as well. And we'll talk about it in terms of personalization as well, which is pretty key. Planners told us what really mattered, and look at that, number one in there, the availability of high quality broadband is critical. And that's over and above things like, you know, flexibility of meeting rooms, lighting, acoustics, you know, food and beverage. You know, all of these are important. They've all got high scores. But number one is the availability of high quality broadband. And this is the one area that I mentioned before where we talked about marketing alignment or not. When meeting planners look at, for instance, what they seek from a venue in terms of their guarantees, the infrastructure and being able to meet their needs, you know, how good are we at being able to provide information, make those guarantees in regards to internet and internet infrastructure if it's number one in their list? And we'll touch on that a bit more in the technology section. From our good friend Rob Davidson, who's been in the industry for many years, Rob, you know, Rob gave a great example of why flexibility is key. We saw flexibility in that stat as well. He says here, why can, you know, I can see why meeting planners just love these chairs on wheels. It's easy to form groups, unform them, and reform them again, you know, and again, they're pretty out there in terms of seating, but really colorful as well. But interesting how we're seeing examples of this really, you know, starting to be shared in many different ways. It's not an IACC venue, I don't think, but worth sharing less. So now we're going to move into specifically the trends that we saw around breaks and meals. Again, just a apology in advance. We're running through a lot of data here. We've got a lot to share in these minutes, so we will share these slides afterwards. Kate will happily do it. We're recording the session so that you can take a look at it in your own time, but I've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to really plow on through here to hopefully give you as much detail as possible. Productive meal service in the day, you know, to allow delegates to check in with the office and the family is really critical. Think about it now. You know, it's not just about eating and networking with your colleagues at the meeting. You know, we know absolutely that delegates have got to do 5 or 6 things. They've got to eat. They've got to meet with their co-delegates to discuss the session they've just been on. That's a given. They've got to connect with the family. They've got to connect with the office, and they've probably got to get on social media and do some stuff there as well. If we think that that's not happening, then really we're kidding ourselves. There's so many things. Now, why is that important, and why is that linked to productive meal service? Well, we think this is what lies behind a bigger trend towards providing more and more buffet style, networking style, more immediate food service, and maybe the formal sit down meals, certainly at lunchtime, because it allows people to connect and do all these things, and they don't go into the meeting space you know, frustrated that they haven't been able to do it because they've been sitting down as part of a 3-course meal where, you know, it's taken the hour up and they've got no time to connect with office, family, friends, etc. Continuous refreshment break stations, I know I'm preaching to the converted here with you as well, but it's still really important. What's nice is meeting planners are seeing the importance of this, and they may or may not be meeting planners that are using IACC certified properties. So we found that was really reassuring and gives us comfort that we're providing great environments and that these are, are still very important. Now, the space outside the meeting room for informal gathering for food and beverage and drink services is really key. Now, for every RFP we get from a meeting planner, we're normally given the specification in terms of the meeting room size, right? It's got to seat 500 people, 200 people, 50 people, cabaret style. They might give us, it's got to be 1,000 square foot, 5,000 square foot, etc. But how often do meeting planners specify the space outside of the meeting room? How many of you have got great spaces outside of the meeting room that have got no other purpose other than, for people to gather, talk, socialize, network, etc.? It's not always the case that meeting spaces within venues, or rather the meeting venues have got great meeting spaces like this outside the meeting room. So make a big thing of it. And we believe that meeting planners will start to be more sensitive and awake to the fact and alert to the fact that these spaces can really add value to their delegates and their experience as well. More time for breaks and networking as well. That's a common theme. We've seen that and it's not going away. Just wanted to get everyone hungry here. So what time of the day are we? Yep, we're nearing lunchtime in the US. So it's about time to start thinking of food, and we're definitely getting near dinner time for those in Europe. No, joking apart, this is one simple way that we can provide more networking opportunities. So even if you still have a gala dinner, a formal sit-down dinner as well, some of our members and meeting planners reported back that having just the dessert separate from the sit-down meal, so in a more networking style waiter-waitress service, is one way to bring networking into an evening where it is still a little bit more functional. So I'm sure there's many other great examples as well that you have and have seen. One thing, planners were split between shorter breaks and more, whether they have shorter breaks more often, i.e. 2 mid-morning breaks, 2 mid-afternoon breaks, or whether they just have that longer single break. Think about it. If we're reducing the amount of time that we're willing to sit and watch a keynote speaker or be in a workshop, it used to be 90 minutes, no more. It's gone from an hour. In fact, a lot of our events now, 45 minutes we're seeing as an optimal amount of time to run a workshop and get people out. So if that's the case, then you can see an earlier morning break time and a later morning break time to help facilitate people getting between workshops. Meeting planners did feedback though that they didn't want food. If they're going to have 2 breaks in morning and afternoon, don't give delegates food, because where they had done it on both occasions, they're actually giving them too much food. They're sending them to sleep and it wasn't productive. Food and beverage offerings are directly linked to attendee satisfaction and an excellent way to personalize the experience. I'm not going to go into anything too deep here, because we'll look at a few examples there, but it's absolutely critical and one of the key ways of being able to personalize the experience. And that's going way beyond just allergens and dietary requirements. It's about again saying, if we're providing a buffet, are we providing different themes, different food from different parts of the world on that buffet, that are going to deal with the different cultures that are represented in part of our delegate groups. Now, this isn't that delegates are coming necessarily from, from different parts of the world for that meeting, but look at the makeup, look at the cultures, look at the different tastes of your delegates in your own groups, whether they're all national or international. You've got a real variation there. One of the biggest pain points in 2018 for meeting planners is the lack of accommodation for dietary needs. So they are getting bombarded. They're getting absolutely hit from all 4 angles from their delegates. Sometimes they ask the question, do you have any dietary requirements? And they're not just getting the allergen information coming through now, they're getting people's sort of personal preferences, what type of diet that they might be on at the moment. It might be less critical, but it part of their personal eating plan, they're really getting hit. The number of vegetarians and vegans are increasing as well. It continues to go up and up. And look at this, 79% of meeting planners have said, that they're receiving more dietary requests now than they were 1 to 2 years ago. So think about that maybe in relation to if this is a pain point, they're handling more information, that your meeting planners are finding it harder to ask the right questions, order and pass on to the venues and get confidence from the venues that they'll deal with all these dietary requirements and requests. If this is an area of strength or can be for you and you can hold their hand and provide something that really helps them with this, I would certainly be recommending it and talking about it during the site inspection process, because you could just take one big headache away from them. So let's have a look at a couple of food trends. This is linked as well to our recent nutrition and well-being guide that you can download on the IACC site, but more vegetables, less meat. Vegetable-related food trends are absolutely on the rise. Number of vegetarians and vegans still increasing. It's been around a long time, but it's increasing. The top LA restaurants now, interestingly, we're seeing a trend where the meat dish is now becoming the side dish. So you'll order your main course, it may be, vegetable based, etc. And then you go down and your smaller dish and side dishes are the protein, are the meat. Fascinating, right? Healthier, much better for the individual as well. Also an opportunity really to shine and create menus of difference. Presentation is absolutely everything. Now, through photos, it's really hard for me to kind of give you great presentation options, but I can tell you here at this event that we ran in DC, there were a number of stations around the room. This one station had got all olive bowls, different levels. This was actually a vegetable display, so there was no meat, proteins on there as well. It was by far the most colorful station in the whole room, and I from a meeting perspective. The increasing use of ancient grains in menus, superfoods beyond health reasons. If your kitchens are using ancient grains in the menus, do it. Use them. Talk about it to your meeting planners and promote it through your stations. I talked a little bit about providing buffets and different culture of food. So hybrid and fusion cuisine, where we're bringing together, different cultural dishes into one element. It's, again, more appealing, really becoming a trendy option here. One example is Hawaiian ahi poke bowl food. We're starting to see the melding of styles and flavors coming along. If they're bowl food, again, helps facilitate networking. So that trend really does play into our hands in terms of providing some great networking style dishes. Cultural diversity, having a substantial influence as well. So look at this, gluten-free, no longer an exceptional request. Food labeling on conference buffets are definitely becoming more common, and 75% of staff at IACC venues and those venues that participated were given specific allergy training. So this isn't having a policy, this is about having specific training for all members of staff that are involved in food service. Is it enough? Well, actually, we don't think so. Again, if this is becoming bigger and bigger, we'd like to see 100% of staff giving allergy training. And again, if you do that, then that's something to definitely to brag about, right? Informal, flexible, and grazing style is really important in the dining options. This is quite a fun one, but actually, it's quite a serious one as well. In Europe, we have a group with some 45 to 50 venues throughout Europe, and they offer the equivalent of Sandals, the all-inclusive holiday, but for meetings. And so all delegates, it's an all-inclusive complete meeting package, 24-hour delegate rate, and they get to just help themselves from the bar. Actually, there are no bar staff there at all. It is all self-service. It's all included within the CMP. Maybe difficult for some to be able to do that, and certainly from a legislation perspective in some parts of the world, it might well be very difficult. but it's an interesting concept nonetheless. And a lot of large organizations, McKinsey's, Deloitte's, IBM's, all those ones that are using you for training courses and events, their very senior leadership programs are happening in that one chain of chateau style properties. So that's enough on food and beverage. I mentioned that we've got trends and in nutrition and well-being. So take a look on IACC's website, download that, it's free. We're going to move in now to physical meeting space and design. Now, there's definitely been a noticeable trend in creating venues which emulate a homely setting. That's something that, you know, people are very comfortable now with working and being productive in a setting that's more akin to your home, and that's having more and more of an influence in the venues, you know, public spaces, even meeting spaces. There's a number of respondents believe the space outside the meeting room is as important as the space inside. Again, just think about that for a moment. This is meeting planners, serious meeting planners globally, telling us that the space outside of the meeting room is as important as the space inside. That you would never have heard this 10 years ago from a meeting planner. So if you create space, and that includes the outdoors, then again, you should be making a big part of it in your sales, marketing, and in your bragging points when arranging site inspections, even to a point of, you know, if you've got good Wi-Fi in your outdoor areas, then that's something to make a really big statement on. And spaces, you know, this won't be a surprise to all of you, but spaces, you know, must facilitate more conversational delivery and not be content driven. Here's just an example. Actually, for those of you who are going to be with us in Philadelphia next week for IACC's annual conference, you'll recognize this firsthand. This is the Chubb Hotel and Conference Center outside Philadelphia. You know, and I'm showing this because this is not the same breakout room. These are 4 of the breakout rooms, all equipped differently with steel cases, furniture. You know, it's not a inspiring room, let's say, but with the inspiring use of furniture, it's created that interest, made it more interesting, you know, and moved away from that typical boardroom style setting. Here's an example in Sweden, exactly the same, breakout rooms, syndicate rooms, whatever you call them, you know, making them more interesting, making them more flexible. Certainly the one in the bottom right, you definitely have an option to be able to just move that around as your meeting moves around. Look at the colors being used here. Look at the art, look at the points of interest. You know, these are the old boardrooms that you'd see before. This one is a round meeting room. And round meeting rooms are becoming more popular. Think about it, you know, when we first started, you know, having meetings, you know, thousands and years ago, we probably sat around a campfire, looked at each other in the eye and built a connection. Well, why should that be any different in meeting spaces? And this is an example from Europe of a round meeting room. Now, if any of you have got meeting spaces as well in, you know, and you're dealing with larger groups, this is an example from Eindhoven, sorry, I beg your pardon, from Copenhagen, an event where there were 400 attendees, and they provided different styles of seating in that room. So remember I talked about personalization? Yes, they offered theatre style. Yes, they offered, you know, nice seats with sort of boxes with sheepskin rugs at the back. They had high top tables and chairs as well. There are about 4 different types. And the one thing that was fascinating was when I watched people come into this room, the delegates, everyone without exception looked at all the options available, made a personal choice, and no, you couldn't anticipate who was going to go for what. It really was random, but they made that personal choice. So that's where I talk about personalization as really being something to consider. If we provide just one style of seating in a meeting room, then, you know, potentially we're missing an opportunity. So now we'll move on to communications and connections. Respondents were not entirely sure what to expect from virtual reality. And we thought that, you know, when we asked a little bit more about that, you know, the highest cost of a meeting generally of a conference is the keynote speaker. When it becomes more affordable to bring in a hologram keynote, then we feel that virtual reality is really going to take off. You know, for instance, you know, if at the moment it's easy to spend $15,000, £10,000, 12,000 euros on a keynote speaker. Well, when we can bring in a even higher level keynote speaker, you know, think of George Clooney or somebody, you know, of that level where it costs less to bring them in as a hologram for 30 minutes than it does to bring somebody in physically, then we really think that technology is going to take off. A lower number of apps have been implemented in 2017. I'm not going to spend much time on that. We think that's a blip. We don't think it's a trend. Conference apps really are popular and remain popular. I talked about as well audience participation and collaboration there. 91% of meeting planners said that audience participation, polling, Q&A technologies, again, if you've been to IACC conferences, you've seen this recently, they say it's improving the delegate communication. And it's going way beyond just Q&A and polling. Now we've got slide sharing coming on. So, next week at our conference, delegates will be able to share the slides real time. They don't have to wait until after the conference to have, the speaker slides shared. They're there, they're on their smartphones, they're commenting on it as they're in the session. 58% of our buyers said they would shortlist a venue with no internet performance guarantee. I would highlight this as a real standout point because, as I mentioned before, if internet infrastructure capability, performance and quality, which I know is always great within IACC certified properties, if it's not being given the respect and the prominence in your sales and marketing offer, in terms of the training your sales and marketing team have got, in terms of being able to accurately share that with meeting planners, and I mean going way beyond the, when you're asked a question, just being able to say, well, we don't get any complaints from other conferences, so I'm guessing it's okay. That just won't cut it. But again, you're underselling your capabilities, because there's still a lot of properties out there and hotels that cannot provide the quality that you do. So just take a look at your marketing and see maybe how much prominence you're giving that, if it's something that you really can be shouting from the rooftops. 72% of planners say that free and affordable broadband will be critical in the next 5 years. Again, we know many IACC members are doing this. If you're an IACC member, by the way, and you haven't updated your IACC listing, we've put internet capabilities on there now, and very soon meeting planners will be able to search against that. So just have a look on iacmeetings.com. If you haven't put your internet infrastructure details in there, please do it. Speak with Matthew or Kate about your login if you need that, because it's something that we want to provide that information to meeting planners. And it's no longer now just about megabits per second. It's about the infrastructure, about the access points. It's about give the meeting planner confidence that they are absolutely dealing with an expert that can handle their meeting. And for any of you in the meeting planner community, I just wanted to share one picture here with you, which is of the MPI website. And on the MPI's global website, in their tools section, they have planner resources page, and we have a venue finder that takes every MPI meeting planner through to the IAC website to be able to search iacmeetings.com. So it's a really, way for meeting planners. It provides a lot of traffic. So do just make sure that your listings are up to date. If we think about some of the highlights today that we've been sharing in terms of trends and what's important to planners, does that come through in your listing? Are the images that you got, really drawing on these sort of points and these sort of strengths, or are we just opting for, an external shot, a couple of empty meeting rooms, and not going beyond that? So here are some of the summaries and findings. Well-designed, dedicated meeting focus spaces are absolutely essential to meeting planners today. You've got it, you provide it, it gives you assurance that this is something that you can, share that knowledge with the meeting planners next time, with your clients next time you're together. Meetings need to be well supported by knowledgeable staff. I'll give you an example. Some of our meeting venue operators, are asking the question, do we need great IT people, or do we need great AV people? Well, it's about both, but some venue operators say that they can make a great AV person out of a competent IT person, but it's different or difficult the other way around. I'm sure there are exceptions, but just food for thought. Meeting planners will need to be aware of which meeting environment will best match their organization's culture. And again, there's some research findings. If you download the IAC Meeting Room in the Future research, which you can do at the footer of there's lots of information if you're interested in terms of, does your venue match the culture of, say, Google or Barclays Bank or, Deloitte. And we talked about technologies and all of the technologies that you can use, but meeting planners, again, what they're saying is technology must be easy to integrate and just work. It can't be complicated. So think about that with anything that you bring in. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope that that's been of value